The rain fell steadily over the quiet town of Clearbrook, its streets glistening under the glow of streetlights. Inside the Clearbrook fire station, the night was calm but charged with the kind of readiness only firefighters understood. The team was wrapping up a long shift. The faint aroma of coffee wafted through the common room as Chief Tom Reynolds, a seasoned firefighter with 25 years of service, flipped through paperwork at his desk. Reynolds, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 50s, had seen it all: raging infernos, miraculous rescues, and heartbreaking losses. He was known for his no-nonsense demeanor, but beneath the stoic exterior was a man who cared deeply about his team and his duty. The station was his second home, and its crew was his family. Out in the main hall, firefighters joked and swapped stories as they cleaned gear and prepared for what they hoped would be an uneventful night. The atmosphere was warm, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter or the clatter of boots on the tiled floor. But outside, a different story was unfolding, one that would soon disrupt their quiet night and leave an indelible mark on everyone involved. A disturbance at the door. The faint sound of rain pattering against the windows was suddenly broken by a strange noise. A frantic scratching at the station's metal front door, followed by high-pitched whimpers. Firefighter Mike Taylor, who was nearest the entrance, cocked his head. "Did you hear that?" he asked, turning to his partner, Sarah Carter. "Probably just the wind," Sarah replied, but her voice lacked certainty. The sound came again, louder this time. It wasn't the wind. Mike set his coffee cup down and walked to the door. When he opened it, he froze. Standing in the rain was a soaking wet German Shepherd mix, her matted fur clinging to her lean frame. In her mouth, she carried a small, squirming puppy. Her eyes were wide, desperate, and pleading. She looked up at Mike, whimpered, and carefully placed the puppy on the dry threshold before stepping back. "Guys!" Mike called, his voice echoing through the station. "You need to see this." Within seconds, the rest of the crew gathered at the door, their conversations replaced by murmurs of surprise and concern. Chief Reynolds stepped forward, his brow furrowed as he took in the sight. "What in the world?" Reynolds muttered, kneeling to get a better look at the dog. She was trembling, her body slick with rain, and her sides heaved with exhaustion. The puppy at her feet let out a faint cry, its tiny body shivering against the cold. "She's hurt," Sarah said, pointing to the singed fur on the dog's flank. "Looks like she's been near a fire." The mother dog barked softly, then turned and darted a few steps away, pausing to look back at the group. Her message was clear. She needed their help. "She's trying to tell us something," Mike said, glancing at Reynolds. The chief straightened, his gaze locking with the dog's. "Get the gear," he ordered. "We're going after her." The pursuit. Within minutes, the firefighters were ready, donning their raincoats and boots. Armed with flashlights and a portable med kit, they followed the dog into the rainy night. She moved quickly despite her apparent injuries, her paws splashing through puddles as she led them down a narrow street. "Where is she taking us?" Sarah asked, squinting through the rain. "No idea," Reynolds replied, his voice steady. "But she's determined. Let's keep moving." The dog turned onto a side road, leading them toward the industrial outskirts of town. The rain fell harder, drumming against the firefighters' jackets, but they pressed on. Eventually, the faint smell of smoke reached their noses. "Do you smell that?" Mike asked, his pace quickening. Reynolds nodded grimly. "Something's burning." The scene of the fire. The group soon arrived at an abandoned warehouse, its decrepit exterior illuminated by the glow of flames flickering through broken windows. Smoke billowed from the roof, mingling with the rain to create a heavy, choking haze. The mother dog stopped at the entrance, barking frantically. She looked back at the firefighters, her urgency unmistakable. "She must have more puppies inside," Sarah said, her voice tight with worry. Reynolds didn't hesitate. "All right, let's move. Mike, Sarah, you're with me. The rest of you secure the perimeter and get the hoses ready. We don't know how bad this fire is." The firefighters moved swiftly, their years of training kicking in. As the team prepared to enter the building, the mother dog pawed at the door, whimpering and pacing. Reynolds knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her head. "We'll get them out," he said, his voice firm. "Stay here." The rescue mission. The interior of the warehouse was a chaotic maze of smoke, debris, and flames. The firefighters navigated carefully, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The smell of burning wood and plastic was overpowering, but they pushed forward, guided by faint whimpers echoing from deeper within the building. "There!" Sarah shouted, pointing to a pile of crates near the back wall. Through the gaps, they could see tiny, wriggling bodies, a litter of 4 puppies huddled together, their eyes squeezed shut against the heat and smoke. "Poor things," Mike murmured. "They're terrified." Reynolds nodded. "Let's get them out. Carefully." The team worked quickly, using crowbars to pry the crates apart and create a safe path. Sarah reached in first, gently lifting one of the puppies and cradling it against her chest. Mike followed suit, while Reynolds kept watch for falling debris. As they carried the puppies toward the exit, the fire suddenly flared, sending a shower of sparks cascading down. The mother dog, waiting anxiously outside, barked furiously, her cries spurring the team to move faster. A heroic reunion. When the firefighters emerged from the warehouse, coughing and covered in soot, the mother dog rushed to meet them. She barked and whined, circling them as they set the puppies down on a blanket. One by one, the tiny pups began to stir, their cries weak but steady. The mother dog licked each of them, her tail wagging furiously despite her own exhaustion. It was a moment of pure relief and gratitude, and even the toughest firefighters couldn't help but smile. "Good girl," Reynolds said, kneeling beside her. He reached out a hand, and to everyone's surprise, the dog leaned into him, her eyes soft with trust. "She's incredible," Sarah said, wiping tears from her soot-streaked face. "She risked everything to save them." Back at the station, the firefighters returned to the station with the mother dog and her puppies in tow. They set up a warm area in the garage, complete with blankets, food, and water. The mother dog watched intently as her puppies nursed, her body finally relaxing. Reynolds stood nearby, his arms crossed as he observed the scene. For a man who rarely showed emotion, his expression was uncharacteristically soft. "You know," Mike said, breaking the silence, "she deserves a name." "How about Ember?" Sarah suggested. "It fits, doesn't it?" Reynolds nodded. "Ember it is," foreshadowing the chief's decision. As the night wore on, the firefighters took turns checking on Ember and her puppies. The story of their rescue began to spread, and calls from curious neighbors and reporters started pouring in. Reynolds, however, was focused on something else. He sat in his office staring at the station's mascot plaque, a tradition where they honored notable animals who had crossed their path. Ember's name, he decided, would soon join the list. "She's more than just a stray," he said to himself. "She's one of us now." With that, Reynolds stood, his mind made up. Ember and her puppies had found their home. The atmosphere at the fire station had shifted overnight. Ember, the mother dog, and her 4 rescued puppies had stolen the hearts of every firefighter. While the pups rested in a warm corner of the station, wrapped in blankets, Ember paced protectively, keeping a watchful eye over her brood. Chief Reynolds, known for his gruff demeanor, found himself lingering near the garage where the family was housed. He would never admit it, but something about Ember's fierce determination had struck a chord with him. Mike and Sarah, who were already smitten with the puppies, had taken the lead in setting up a small playpen and organizing food donations from the local pet store. "She's incredible," Sarah said, kneeling beside Ember and scratching her behind the ears. "You know, if it weren't for her instincts, those puppies wouldn't have made it." "She's got the heart of a firefighter," Mike added, grinning. "Fearless, determined, and all about saving lives." Reynolds, overhearing from the doorway, smirked. "Don't let her hear that, or she'll be wearing a uniform next week." The crew chuckled, but the truth was Ember had already become an honorary member of the station. Her presence lifted spirits, and the puppies provided a much-needed dose of levity in an otherwise demanding profession. Media attention and community involvement. Word of Ember's dramatic rescue quickly spread beyond the walls of the station. Photos of her and the puppies, taken by the firefighters, began circulating online. Within days, the story had gone viral, capturing the hearts of people across the town and beyond. Local news stations showed up to interview Chief Reynolds and the firefighters about the extraordinary events of that night. Reporters eagerly filmed footage of Ember and her puppies, who had grown more playful and curious as they recovered. "So, Chief Reynolds," one reporter asked during a live interview, "what do you make of Ember's actions that night?" Reynolds paused, glancing at Ember, who sat calmly beside him as if she understood she was the star of the show. "I've seen a lot in my career," he said, his voice steady. "But I've never seen anything like her. She didn't just save her puppies. She reminded us why we do what we do. She's a hero, plain and simple." The community rallied around Ember and her pups, flooding the station with donations of food, blankets, and toys. A local veterinarian even offered free medical checkups for the entire litter. The outpouring of support left the firefighters overwhelmed and deeply touched. 3. Challenges with the puppies. While Ember had adjusted quickly to life at the station, her puppies presented a unique set of challenges. The 4 little balls of energy quickly grew bolder, waddling around the station and getting into everything. One pup, a feisty one the crew had nicknamed Sparky, managed to sneak into the engine bay and chew through a set of cables before anyone noticed. "Sparky!" Sarah scolded, scooping the pup up and holding him at eye level. "You can't chew on the equipment. This stuff costs more than you do." Mike laughed, leaning against the doorframe. "He's just trying to help out. Maybe he wants to be an electrician." Despite the chaos, the firefighters couldn't stay mad. The puppies had brought a new energy to the station, reminding everyone that even in the toughest jobs, there was room for joy. Reynolds, however, had his hands full, ensuring the station remained operational. One evening, as he watched the puppies scamper around the garage, he muttered under his breath, "We're running a firehouse, not a daycare." But even he couldn't suppress a smile when Ember trotted over, her tail wagging, and nuzzled his hand in thanks. Ember's instincts saved the day again. A few weeks after the warehouse rescue, the station received a call about a house fire on the outskirts of town. The team quickly geared up and prepared to head out. Ember, now familiar with the hustle of the station, grew agitated as the alarm blared. She barked and paced near the truck, as if urging the team to hurry. "Looks like Ember wants to join us," Mike joked as he climbed into the engine. Reynolds hesitated for a moment before making a decision that surprised everyone. "Let her come. She's proven she can handle herself." The team exchanged surprised glances but didn't question the chief. Ember hopped into the truck, her ears perked and her eyes sharp. When they arrived at the scene, the fire was already raging. As the team worked to extinguish the flames, Ember began sniffing the air, her body tense. She darted toward a side window, barking frantically. "What's she doing?" Sarah shouted over the roar of the fire. Reynolds followed Ember's gaze and saw faint movement through the smoke. "There's someone in there!" he yelled. With Ember leading the way, the team located an unconscious child in a back room. They carried the child to safety, and the paramedics later confirmed that if they had been just minutes later, the outcome could have been tragic. Back at the station, Reynolds knelt beside Ember, rubbing her head. "You've got better instincts than most people I know," he said. "You saved a life today." Tensions among the crew. As Ember's fame grew, not everyone in the station was thrilled. Some firefighters began to grumble that the attention on Ember was overshadowing their work. One particularly vocal critic, Jake Peters, made his feelings known during a team meeting. "With all due respect, Chief," Jake said, his arms crossed, "we're firefighters, not pet sitters. I get that the dog's a hero, but this is getting ridiculous." Reynolds fixed him with a steady gaze. "You think this is about the dog? It's about what she represents. Ember reminded us why we're here, to protect and serve, no matter who needs help." Jake muttered something under his breath, but didn't argue further. The rest of the team remained silent, their loyalty to Ember and the chief clear. Later, Sarah approached Jake in private. "You know, she's done more for this station in a few weeks than some of us have in years," she said. "Maybe instead of complaining, you should try learning from her." A difficult decision. As the weeks turned into months, the question of what to do with Ember and her puppies loomed over the station. While the community had been supportive, it was clear that keeping the entire litter at the firehouse wasn't sustainable. The puppies were growing quickly, and their boundless energy was starting to interfere with the station's operations. Reynolds called a team meeting to address the situation. "We need to find homes for the pups," he said, his tone firm. "It's not fair to keep them cooped up here." The room fell silent. No one wanted to see the puppies go, but they knew the chief was right. Mike raised his hand. "I'll take Sparky. He's a troublemaker, but I think he'll fit in at my place." One by one, the crew volunteered to adopt the puppies, ensuring they would all stay within the Firehouse family. By the end of the meeting, all 4 pups had homes lined up. "What about Ember?" Sarah asked, her voice quiet. Reynolds looked at the dog, who was lying at his feet. "She stays," he said simply. "This is her home now." A bond that can't be broken. With the puppies settled into their new homes, life at the station returned to a semblance of normalcy. Ember, however, remained a constant presence, her loyalty to the firefighters unshakable. She greeted them at the door after every call, her tail wagging as if to say, "Good job." One evening, as the crew relaxed in the common room, Reynolds found himself watching Ember play with a donated chew toy. He thought back to the night she had first arrived, soaked and desperate, carrying her tiny puppy in her mouth. "You know," Sarah said, sitting beside him, "I've never seen you like this before. She's changed you." Reynolds chuckled, shaking his head. "She didn't change me, she reminded me of what matters." Months after Ember's dramatic arrival and the events that followed, her story continued to resonate throughout the town. The fire station had become a point of pride in Clearbrook, not just for its brave firefighters, but for its newest and most unique member. Ember was no longer just a stray dog. She was a symbol of courage and resilience. The town's mayor, Janice Carter, announced that Ember would be formally recognized for her actions. A special ceremony was planned at the fire station, where Ember would receive the town's first ever Heroic Animal Award. The news spread quickly, and on the day of the event, the station was packed with residents, reporters, and even firefighters from neighboring towns. Chief Reynolds, in his dress uniform, stood proudly at the podium, with Ember sitting calmly at his side. The crowd erupted in applause as Mayor Carter presented the award, a gold-plated collar engraved with the words, "To Ember, a true hero." Reynolds knelt beside Ember, clipping the collar around her neck. "You've earned this," he whispered, scratching her behind the ears. Ember wagged her tail, her calm demeanor betraying a spark of excitement in her eyes. As the ceremony concluded, the mayor announced an even greater surprise. The town had raised funds to support the fire station in creating an official animal rescue division inspired by Ember's story. The crowd erupted into cheers, and for the first time in years, Reynolds felt a swell of hope, not just for his station, but for the community it served. A new purpose. The creation of the Animal Rescue Division transformed the fire station's role in the community. Ember became its mascot and unofficial leader, often accompanying the firefighters on rescue calls. The team received specialized training in handling animals during emergencies, from house fires to natural disasters. Sarah, who had grown especially close to Ember, took the lead in organizing community outreach programs. She visited schools with Ember in tow, teaching children about fire safety and the importance of caring for animals. Sparky, one of Ember's puppies now living with Mike, occasionally joined the presentations, delighting students with his playful antics. Reynolds observed these changes with a quiet satisfaction. The station was no longer just a place where fires were fought. It had become a hub of compassion and community engagement. And at the center of it all was Ember. 3. A test of strength. One evening, a call came in about a massive storm system moving toward Clearbrook. The fire station was on high alert, preparing for potential floods and emergency rescues. The tension in the air was palpable as Reynolds briefed his team. "We've got reports of rising water levels near the river," he said. "It's already displaced some families, and there's a chance of more flooding tonight. Stay sharp and stay together." As the storm intensified, calls began pouring in. One report described a stranded family in a low-lying area, their car trapped by rapidly rising floodwaters. Reynolds dispatched a team, including Sarah and Ember, to assist. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. The river had overflowed its banks, and the family, 2 parents and a young boy, was trapped on the roof of their car. The current was too strong for them to swim, and debris in the water made the situation even more dangerous. Sarah waded into the water, tethered to a safety line, while Ember barked from the shore. The boy, clinging to his father, began to cry, his voice barely audible over the roar of the river. "Hold on," Sarah shouted. "We're coming to get you." But just as Sarah reached the car, a large piece of driftwood hurtled toward her. She dodged it, but the movement caused her footing to slip. Seeing her stumble, Ember acted without hesitation. She plunged into the water, paddling against the current with surprising strength. "Ember, no!" Sarah called, but it was too late. Ember reached the car, steadying herself against its side. The boy, wide-eyed and trembling, reached out to her. Somehow, the dog's presence calmed him, and he stopped crying long enough for Sarah to secure the safety harness around him. With Sarah leading and Ember paddling beside them, the boy was safely brought to shore. The crowd of onlookers erupted in cheers, and the boy's parents hugged him tightly, their gratitude spilling over in tears. Back at the station, Reynolds knelt beside Ember, who was soaked and shivering but otherwise unharmed. "You're something else, girl," he said, wrapping a warm towel around her. "You've got more heart than most people I know." A bittersweet goodbye. As the months rolled on, Ember's puppies grew into strong, healthy dogs, each thriving in their new homes. Mike often brought Sparky to the station, where he and Ember would reunite with wagging tails and playful growls. The bond between mother and pup was unbreakable, and their antics always brought smiles to the crew. But as much as Ember had become a part of the fire station family, Reynolds knew that her story wasn't finished. One day he received a call from a woman named Linda Harper, a wildlife rehabilitation specialist who had read about Ember's heroism. "Chief Reynolds," Linda said, her voice warm, "I've been following Ember's story, and I believe she has the potential to help even more animals. If you're open to it, I'd like to work with her and train her as a search and rescue dog." Reynolds was torn. Ember had become a fixture at the station, a source of comfort and inspiration for the entire team. But he also knew that Linda's offer could give Ember the opportunity to save even more lives. After discussing it with the crew, Reynolds made the difficult decision to let Ember go. On her last day at the station, the firefighters held a small farewell ceremony, presenting Ember with a custom-made badge that read, "Firefighter Ember, always ready, always brave." As Linda drove away with Ember in the passenger seat, Reynolds watched from the station steps, his heart heavy but proud. "She's going to do great things," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Though Ember's legacy. Ember's departure left a noticeable void at the fire station, but her impact lingered in countless ways. The animal rescue division she had inspired continued to thrive, responding to emergencies and educating the public. Reynolds, Sarah, Mike, and the rest of the crew often shared stories about Ember's heroism, ensuring that her legacy remained alive. Months later, Reynolds received a letter from Linda, accompanied by a photograph of Ember in her new role as a search and rescue dog. The letter described her first successful mission, helping to locate a lost hiker in the mountains. "She's a natural," Linda wrote. "Thank you for trusting us with her. She's making a difference every day." Reynolds framed the photo and hung it in the station's common room, where it served as a reminder of the dog who had changed all their lives. 6. The fire station's future. Though Ember was no longer physically present, her influence shaped the fire station's culture for years to come. New recruits heard about her during their first days on the job, and her story became a cornerstone of the station's community outreach programs. Reynolds, nearing retirement, often reflected on the night Ember had first appeared. He thought about her bravery, her trust in humans, and the way she had brought his team closer together. One evening, as the crew gathered around the table after a quiet shift, Reynolds raised his coffee mug. "To Ember," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "The best firefighter we ever had." The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in cheers. Outside, the town of Clearbrook carried on, its people safer and more united thanks to one extraordinary dog and the firefighters who had opened their hearts to her.